and the candy man. Like a freight train rolling, bringing truth bombs down the line. Promoting the Southland 1 week at a time. Promoting the Southland 1 week at a time. SCV chat starts now.
Good Monday evening and happy Labor Day. Hope everybody is having a wonderful holiday. Moose and I are here. I hope you saw our message about what tonight's episode is about. It's a very important episode. We're going to kill just a little bit of time while we're waiting on our viewership to get up. We know normally it takes about 5 minutes to get everybody in, but it seems like everybody is rolling in. Before we get started, as usual, though, the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of the SCV, its GEC, any division, brigades, camps, or other subsidiaries, strictly those of us who are expressing them. All right, we have C-Wide RAs. Good evening to Jack, Sean, John, Gerald, Dr. Sandy Mitchum, Paul Gramling Jr., Chuck McMichael, Roy, and Linda Hudson from Florida. Seems like the gang's all getting in there. Moose, it looks like we've got our got viewership up to a pretty good. Hello, Terry Klima. Go ahead and bring on our special guest and let them get kicked off.
All right, as everybody knows, we have some very special guests tonight. First, I would like to introduce the Commander-in-Chief, Jason Boshears, and our National Publication Affairs Officer, Edward Phillips.
Esquire.
True.
You have to put the Esquire in there, don't we?
He earned it.
I want to say thank y'all to Connor and Harrison for allowing us to come on. There's been a lot of information that has been passed around lately, and some of it is misinformation. And one of the things that we're not going to talk about any of the misinformation. We're just going to tell you the information. One of the things that the Sons of Confederate Veterans has been involved in for a little while now is concerning the Arlington National Monument and the removal of the Reconciliation Memorial in Arlington National Cemetery. This past weekend, you were asked to, and the reason why, one of the reasons why we're coming on is to help clear up some of the confusion that people have. Now, the Arlington National Cemetery is its own entity. Am I correct about that?
Yes, sir. You are correct.
Okay. And what we asked you to do this past weekend was to make comments toward Arlington National Cemetery. Now, there's going to be 3 opportunities for comments to be made. That's what they told us in one of their comment. You remember the meeting that we were on, Ed, in which that's what they talked about. There were going to be 3 different comment set times.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the first one. I hope that everybody got on and made comments. There were a lot of people that were sharing it and putting it out there. What come out on the Telegraph was a very detailed accounting of everything that is going on. And Mr. Ed Phillips here, who is the national spokesman and he's head of relations. And I'm just going to ask him if he will to give a rundown on what went into the comments that were made to Arlington National Cemetery.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that, Commander. So where we are is obviously the scoping comments, the first set went out, by September 2nd. And it took a number of us to put those together, a lot of review and a lot of discussion. And quite frankly, these are part of the steps that must occur during the review by the Department of the Army, by the Department of Defense, through Arlington in terms of the National Environmental Protection Act and the National Historical Preservation Act. So the comments that we've been making are basically telling Arlington, this is our input, this is what we think, and this is why we think you shouldn't do these things. And it's not easy. It's actually pretty difficult in terms of, getting everything together, coordinating people's schedules, and then making sure it's easy enough for our members to come in and do what they need to do. So sometimes it can be confusing, and our goal is to make it as streamlined as possible.
Very much so. And if you looked at those scoping comments, they were quite detailed. And there was a lot of purpose and a lot of effort put into those scoping comments, and they were reviewed numerous times. And I think the comments covered everything having to do with the NEPA and the EIC very well. That's my opinion. I think those comments, if you use the ones that were coming out on the Telegraph. Now, I know some people were following that link and putting in comments of their own, and they had been for a week or two. And I appreciate everybody doing every bit of that, because one of the critical things here is volume. When they receive thousands of these, it makes a difference. Would you like to comment on that, Mr. Phillips?
Yes, sir. And what it comes down to, it's right. Volume is most important, because it doesn't matter if the comments are a blueprint. It doesn't matter if they're almost identical or identical, because they still catalog the number of comments they get in. For example, there was an August 11th meeting in which there were 1,036 comments filed prior to the meeting. Then there were 86 people that spoke in the public forum, and every single one of them supported keeping the Confederate Memorial or the Reconciliation Memorial in place. And so that's important. And when we look at everything we do, whether it's reaching out to Congress, that is the House and the Senate, volume really matters. It doesn't matter that it's a pre-planned out response. Sometimes the fact that you take something, maybe even print it out, put it in an envelope, address it, and put a stamp on it, it means a lot, because they know there are enough people who want to deal with this issue. There are enough people who are saying enough is enough, right? And that's really what we have to do. We have to get it into their heads. This is the worst thing they could possibly do. And I can tell you that there are people, I'm sure, at Arlington and in the Army who do not want to do this. And what we're facing with the Department of Justice fighting our lawsuit is we're getting, this position taken by DOJ that, well, there's no way that we can do this because it's mandated by Congress. And it's not. It was a recommendation to take down the memorial at Arlington. And that recommendation on page 16 of volume 3 of their naming commission report, their final report, what they come in to do is they say, look, one of your options is to destroy all the brass elements and to destroy the whole thing. That's never an option. I mean, this nation, we have fought wars against two enemies, the Taliban and the Islamic State. And these are people who destroyed the two Buddhas. The Taliban did that in Afghanistan. They were over 1,000 years old. And then here comes the Islamic State, and they destroy, the ruins of Palmyra, this ancient Roman city. And the question becomes, is the United States that nation? Are we to act just like the enemies we fought in the desert all these years? Are we going to be like them, or are we going to be a nation of laws, a nation of respect, and a nation of people focused on doing the right thing? I hope I know the answer to that, but I'm not 100% certain sometimes, because sometimes you sit back and you get a little flustered because this keeps going on.
Yeah. I can sympathize with that. Sometimes you wonder, why why people are doing what they're doing. And that is the reason why that I believe this huge push that we're going, that we could have with this volume, if people doing it. Like I said, this is the first time for Arlington National Cemetery's comments. We're going to have two more opportunities. The comments that we're going to be making through those, it's going to be prepared by SCV National. They're going to be different kind of comments. The ones that you saw that come out this time, they were having to deal very much directly with, I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, contractual obligations of what they needed to do ahead of time. And in this one case, they put the cart before the horse. One of the first things you're supposed to do is your NEPA, which they did not do until after there was this pushback, and they decided they were going to. Isn't that correct, Mr. Phillips?
That's absolutely correct, because, at this point, they should have began the NEPA process a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
They needed local input, and they needed input from anyone who was interested in the matter. And as part of it, you're looking at, in terms of NEPA and the Historic Preservation Act, you're looking at this whole view of what in the world is the cultural impact, right? And that's where I brought up the fact that you had people out in the middle of the desert, in the middle of Afghanistan, destroying things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a cultural impact. Those two Buddhas can never be replaced.
Mm-mm.
Palmyra, the damage that was done, it can be rebuilt to some degree, but it'll never be the same it was prior to the Islamic State going in there. And it's an important cultural resource. I mean, think about this. A Democrat senator, or former Democrat senator, Jim Webb from Virginia, he was a Marine combat veteran in Vietnam, and he wrote an op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal begging them not to take this action.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know this, but if you read the piece, he also came in and said, look, I was one of the people in Congress who was trying to normalize relations with Vietnam. And he took the Vietnamese delegation to Arlington, to Section 16, to the Reconciliation Memorial. And he told them, he said, look, you can sit back and treat the South Vietnamese as traitors, or you can reconcile with them and go forward. And that's why he brought him to our monument, because, one, it demonstrated the fact that a nation can go through a horrific war and we can come back and say, well, we're past it. We want to move forward together, and we will. And it was a promise. I mean, it was a promise that reconciliation meant something. It wasn't a political game played by McKinley. It was, reconciliation was actually an important thing to him. The last president who had served in the U.S. Army during the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
That should mean something. And the fact that Congress itself, both Democrats and Republicans, passed the funding bill unanimously in 1900 to do this, what it means is they actually cared about the nation, regardless of what the naysayers say, regardless of what people like Ty Seidley say. It's unimportant, because the actions of our ancestors is what's important, and how they set things right matters today. And we can't undo that. So I know that's a little bit philosophical, but that's really where we are.
Well, because it is personal, and because it was the nature of what it is, the Arlington National Cemetery stands for something, and the Reconciliation Memorial stands for something, and because it means something. There is something that is inside all of us that sees the need for us to do this. And I can remember when this come up, when it was first mentioned, we were going, well, that doesn't seem likely. And then boom, there it was. I think we're all at the point that we're not surprised that anything anybody is going to pitch out there for to happen at this point. I think the big surprise is if you are surprised because something is proposed. but I wanted to make sure some clarity on some stuff. The Arlington National Cemetery, and Ed can do a great talk on the Arlington National Cemetery, and everything that President McKinley went through from coming back from the Spanish-American War, and seeing the condition during the tour, and seeing the condition that Confederate grave sites were in, and him feeling the need for this reconciliation. That tells you that there is something inside of that man as well. And he saw what was happening. He knew what had happened, and he felt the need to do that. So now we got to Arlington. Now we've got the comments made about Arlington. This is the first one. We do not know the dates of the other two. When they come out, you'll be notified of those, and we'll be making comments on those two periods also. Now, where that takes us is to where some of my confusion come in. And I'm going to admit, I got a little confused about something. I spent quite a bit of time working on this one-click politics that we're doing, trying to get it set up correctly to be able to send comments to the individuals on these different committees. There's 4 committees, 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate. They are the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. The next one is the House Defense Appropriations Subcommittee and the House Armed Services Committee. These are the individuals that will be that's on these committees, making the decisions about the funding and how all of this is going to go down. And right now we have, and this is what I spent some time doing, because I had to work through exactly which committee that I needed to send these to. Because with this one-click politics, you can send to a particular committee either on the House side or the Senate side. And I had to go through something that Ed had put out earlier, an email that Ed had put out to us, and get some clarity on the committees and subcommittees that it needed to go to. And then I had to go to the one-click politics and just do a line-by-line check on all of the representatives that's going to get stuff, because that's going to get these comments. And then the 4 letters, remember, we're sending to 4 different committees. So we're sending out 4 different letters. And that is now prepped, and it is ready to go, and it is going to be going out on the Telegraph tomorrow. Now, what I didn't want anybody to do was say, okay, there's 2 caveats to this. First one, I'm going to go ahead and mention it because we've talked about this numerous times. In a lot of cases, some of our membership, if they get multiple emails from us in a short period of time, will unsubscribe from the Telegraph. Now, what we have found out is every time that we do something and somebody unsubscribed, we're starting to make contact with them to figure out why they unsubscribed. And in a few cases, this is too much information. I don't have time to do with this. Sometimes I didn't mean to unsubscribe. And in a couple of cases, I didn't unsubscribe. What they had done is they had forwarded the email to somebody, and that person unsubscribed, which unsubscribed them from the Telegraph. Now, we want you to spread this stuff we're going to do on the Telegraph. We're going to want you to push this out. But we wanted you to know that this was not a continuation of the Arlington National Cemetery comment period. That is past. That ended at midnight, actually 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on September 2nd. This is letters going to the politicians in the House and the Senate that's on these committees and these subcommittees. Now, Ed has worked a great deal on these 4 letters, and I want to thank him for the work. The things you've seen on the scope and comments, these 4 letters that have gone out, Ed has been paramount in getting all of this stuff out. And what I want to do is, first I want to begin by thanking him for that. And then when you get these on the Telegraph tomorrow, be careful if you send it, don't just forward it. Copy it, paste it, and send it. Don't just forward the email. copy, paste it, put it out, and get it. And then it's also going to be coming out on social media. And in this, you're going to have a link to all of these 4 committees that you're going to be able to send this letter to. Now, there's also going to be another opportunity in this as well, and this is something, and I'm going to let Ed comment on this. One of the things him and I have talked about is the impact of mailings. Putting printing a letter out, signing your name to it, putting it in an envelope, and mailing it to them. You're going to see, and we'll even provide the links to the committees, the individuals on these committees. And you can get their addresses, and you will be able to print this letter off, put your name, put their address on it, and be able to mail it to them. Receiving something in the mail, I am told by the people from One Click Politics, is extremely powerful. Now, the thing that we thought about, the thing that would be most impactful, because we realize this is 4 letters, and you're going to be sending these. Honestly, I think you're looking, I figured it up, I think it's 87 people on these 2 committees in both the House and the Senate. So you're going to, if you printed them out, mailed them to everybody, you're going to be doing it 87 times. But what if you just pick somebody on this committee and you're a resident of their state, or they represent you, or you're from a neighboring state? For one of them, Mitch McConnell is in Kentucky. He's on one of these committees. I live here in Tennessee. Why can't I print that letter to Mitch McConnell? And just put on there, I'm from a bordering state. And I just, it just for an impact purposes, because an impact has to be made on this. So when this comes out, and these letters are coming out, and they're coming out tomorrow on the Telegraph, I ask that use them. Because one thing that I've been asked the most in recent months is, what is the SCV doing concerning Arlington? Well, that's the second thing. The first thing is, when are you going to put the Forest Plaza back up? The second question is, what are you doing about Arlington? So we know this is high priority on everybody's mind. This is something for you to be able to do. Now I'm going to turn the floor over for a minute, because Ed was so paramount in creating all of these letters and these procedures that we have talked about. Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you again. So what it comes down to is, when you send letters to Congress, they count them all. And when they count them, they will say at the beginning of their committee or subcommittee hearing that we have received X amount of letters regarding this issue. And not a lot of people write to Congress anymore. And not a lot of people take the time to actually print something off, or actually do a handwritten letter. Sign it, send it off, and put a stamp on it, all those things, right? Because people don't do that much because it's not convenient. But when someone does that, it means that someone actually is paying attention to a much larger issue and something that they find important to them. And if all of a sudden Congress keeps getting a number of these letters, it may be the same. You can tweak them a little bit if you want to. But you got to be careful. Don't say anything that's inappropriate. Don't condemn them. Don't get angry. Just be gracious and be gentlemen. If you do that, they're going to realize people have been taking the time and they actually care about this issue. And when they keep hearing, not only from Arlington National Cemetery, but they hear from their own committee members that they've been receiving letters and none of them favor removal, then all of a sudden they have to ask themselves a very serious question. Is this the right thing to do? Because really that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get them to think this through again. And if you have the population, and at least a sampling of the population, I mean, think about polls, right? When people do polling, these organizations that do these things, they're not polling 320 million Americans. They're polling a sample size, right? And those letters that you send in are a sample size of the view that Americans have. Think about this with the Kaplan polling that we did on the removal of their Arlington Reconciliation Memorial. 60% of Americans polled do not want U.S. tax dollars spent to remove the monument, right?
Mhm.
Number two, 23% want it removed. 17% basically said no comment. And Jason and I had this philosophical discussion. No comment really means no. I mean, think about it, right? When a pollster calls you up and said, well, I'll give it some thought. Call me back 2 days from now, whatever it may be. They call you back, you don't pick it up. So when you said I have no comment or no opinion, what that means is you really are saying no. And same thing with people trying to sell you something. They say, well, let's close the deal today. I said, well, no, let me think about it. Let me think about it means I'm trying to be really nice and leave me alone because I'm going to tell you no, right, at the end of the day. And when you really think about those numbers, it's 77% of Americans do not want this to happen. When they say they have no opinion, they do have an opinion, but they're sort of afraid of expressing it, or they're just trying to be polite. And, when I saw polling probably about several years ago done by, I can't remember, I think it was the Wall Street Journal. It was either that or the New York Times. I think it was the Journal. And they came in and it was well over 70% of people back in 2020 who didn't want to see Confederate memorials being ripped down. And so that Kaplan polling is actually consistent. If you put the 60% plus the 17% who said no comment, no opinion, it really starts getting up to that, past that 70%, which is indicative of where the nation is. And that's why it's important to send those letters out, because it is a matter of, it's a sample from the population, and you actually care to take the time to do it and let them know your opinion.
And I'm glad you phrased it that way, because it's two different processes, two different mind thoughts with this. He mentioned handwriting. I mean, somebody handwrites a letter to a politician, mails it to them. How impactful is that? Now, right now, we're still at the age that they could still deal with cursive writing. Now, if we don't, sometime in the future, we might have to watch cursive writing, But if you mail something in, that's impact. And then there's another process of this called volume. That is where the emails that are going to be coming in, where you're going to be following these 4 links on One Click Politics. That's going to be your volume. That's going to be your volume. The mailed letters are going to be an impact. Because, yes, they get emails just like you do, and there's this whole screen of emails, but do they print them off? No, maybe. I don't know. If it was something extremely insightful or something extremely derogatory, it's going to be either one way or another. The middle of the road's going to be sitting over there in the inbox. I wouldn't think they would print them off, but then again, they might. But this volume that we're going to be talking about, those are going to be sitting in the inbox. But the impact, what's the impact of a stack of letters? If you walk out to your mailbox and you open the mailbox up and there's a stack of letters in there, how impactful is that? And that's what we're talking about. What if sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk is a 200 letters that people have mailed to him? How impactful is that in his mind? And just pick somebody that's from your state, somebody that is on a neighboring state. Just mail a few of these out, and then think about the volume. Follow the links on One Click Politics. Like you said, there's the letters each of these, and if you want to read it and make notes or make some changes, do not be derogatory. No foul language. Don't put them down for what they're doing, because as soon as you do that, it's going into file 13. When it pops up and it says something in there that is extremely inappropriate, the delete button is going to be hit. and that's going to be the end of it. So if you're going to make changes, if not, just sign your name to it and send it on out. Do you have any more comments about any of that? I hope we've made it pretty clear, because remember, we talked about two separate deals, and Arlington National Cemetery is one entity, and the letters that we're going to be doing and sending to our representatives, our senators and our House members, that's a completely separate deal. They're not the same thing. And there has been some confusion to that. And I want to make sure that what was sent out over the weekend does not get confused with what's coming out tomorrow. What's coming out tomorrow, that's another phase of what we're working on. And that's another phase that we're going to need our membership to flood, to do it. Volume, volume, volume. Look at this list, find somebody that you want to send a letter to, print it out, sign your name to it, put a stamp on it, and mail it to them. It's that simple. I know we're asking you to do some work. So, didn't you join this organization? And didn't being part of this organization, when it says, if you're fulfilling your charge to you, sons of Confederate veterans, we will commit to vindication of the cause for which we fought. To your strength will be given the defense of the Confederate soldier's good name, the guardianship of his history. And isn't this a guardianship of his history? Now, I know, well, I don't have time. How much time does it take? I know, well, I don't have a printer. Surely somebody does. If not, do what Mr. Phillips here suggested. Put out a pen and a piece of paper, write something down and mail it to them. It's that simple. People ask what can you do? This is something that you can do. Would you like to add something, sir?
Yes, sir. Lawyers always have to say something, don't they? So here's kind of the way I think about it. This war is being relitigated 160 years later. And our ancestors and us are being made to bear the burden of it. And when we think about, are we going to stand up for them? That's really the question you really should be asking yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to fight for them? And if we don't fight for them, who's going to fight for them? There's no one standing behind us. There are people standing to our side. They're going to do the best they can. But we have to hold the line. And what it comes down to is this. It took veterans from both sides to bring about reconciliation. It is not about what side was chosen, which side really won. It's about doing the right thing. None of us in this organization are going to relitigate the war. Our ancestors accepted the conclusion of the war and the results following from it. They may not have been happy about it, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that they were told by men like General Lee and General Forrest to go home and be good citizens just as you were good soldiers. If you read their farewell addresses, it actually means something.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've told this to a lot of folks, but every single one of my great-great-grandfathers in East Tennessee was in the U.S. Army during the war. But I had a third great-grandfather and uncles and first cousins who were in the Confederate Army. I can't ignore any of them. I can't ignore my U.S. Civil War ancestors, and I can't ignore my Confederate American ancestors either.
Mm-hmm.
Because none of them would want to see what's happening now happen. They would all be shocked. Because there is dignity in a cemetery. There is dignity in reconciliation. And there is dignity in healing old wounds. And Joseph Wheeler was the only general officer to serve as general officer in the Confederate Army and the U.S. Army post-war.
Mhm.
And he could have been angry and he could have said no, but he didn't. His country called on him and he sacrificed one more time. And if he can do that, then all of us can do what we need to do and what we're asking to be done. And I know it's a pain in the neck. I'd prefer that we wouldn't even be having this debate.
Yeah.
And none of this would be the real discussion that's going on. But since they have put this upon us, they have forced the issue, we have to stand like Stonewall did on Henry Hill. We have to take that stand and we have to fight and stay our ground and stand there and not be repulsed and not be pushed back. Because if we're pushed back, then everything is gone. Everything that we hold dear in this nation, everything that we understand to be right and just is gone. We cannot afford to lose this fight. And this fight is a political fight. This fight is a bureaucratic fight. And this fight is a legal fight. And if you really want to get to it, and maybe some people might think I'm completely crazy for saying this, but it's a battle for the spirit of this nation. So it's a spiritual fight.
Mhm.
And the question is, when General Stephen Dill Lee gave us the charge in 1906, do we take that to mean what he said it to mean? Are we willing to do what it takes to stand up and say, I'm going to be counted and I'm going to preserve those memories and the deeds of my forefathers and hold up their good name and let the world know that they fought for what they believed in? You can say whatever you want to say about what they fought for. We know the truth. It's us to know it. And it's for others to accept or reject. If they reject it, that's their choice. But, Jim Webb, if you ever have a chance to go back and read his op-ed piece, it's really, really worth reading. He made the point that I thought someone really needed to make, which was, in the U.S. Army, you had officers being attended by their slaves who were facing men from all these rural areas in the South, who none of them owned a slave. Slave owners were fighting men who didn't own slaves. And people think, well, it's just the Confederates. No, there were 4 slave states in the United States during the war. But, Jim Webb called it like he saw it. He called out their hypocrisy. And he called out the fact that everybody tries to make this a one-issue war when it wasn't. Everybody knows on SCV chat, everybody knows who's a member of the SCV, that this issue is one of the issues. It was part of the economic driver, but it wasn't the be-all, end-all issue. Now, for the abolitionists, it was. But you have to remember the abolitionists were a minority in the United States. Even the Republican Party didn't fully embrace abolition either in 1859. So here's the thing. If they could sit in the trenches at Petersburg, if they could charge the ground in Pickett's charge, if they could go twice the distance at Franklin, what are we going to do for them? That's really the question.
And now y'all know why he's the national spokesman. Because he just summarized all of this up into that description. They can say what the causes were. We know what the causes were. I had my family member, he placed himself before an invading army in his home. That's simple. There were thousands upon thousands of them that did just that. And as far as how the Federals and the Confederates got together along after the war. Here we are 160 years later. I have now gone and visited with the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War during their encampment. And I find them to be very good men, very much dedicated to the history of their organization. And to a man, they want us to defend our organization and the history of our ancestors, because they know they want to do that as well. And if we're denied the right to defend our ancestors, at what point in time is everybody's right going to be taken away? When you start removing rights of people, at what point in time, sooner or later, all rights are going to be removed? And those men of the SUVCW, when I addressed them, I looked out across the audience, and there were men that we called sons of both. They're SOBs. Their ancestors were in the North. Their ancestors were in the South. Their ancestors fought for the United States of America, and our ancestors fought for the Confederate States of America. So we have men that are members of the SCV that are members of the SUVCW. They need to be able to defend both of those men and to be able to honor their men from whichever side they're on. To deny one eventually will lead to the denial of another. And that is where he is talking about the removal of us being and losing all of our histories and it all being eradicated because of the undermining of everything that made America, America. And that's what we're fighting for at this time. With us gone, how much easier does the fight become? It's plain and simple that way. Now I'm going to say this one last thing about the 4 letters that are coming out. Forward them. Copy the links. Find your friends. All of us have friends out there. Send them to your friends. Send them to your family members. Make the comments. Follow those 4 links and make the comments. Send them out there. We all have family and friends. Get them out there. Send them to all of them. Get them to. Now, there is no particular time frame on this because they're just now coming back into DC, coming back into session after today. Actually, they'll start coming back in. And so you're going to have to, over the next few days, you're going to have time to do this. So get these letters prepped and get them sent to them. Now, you also heard what Mr. Phillips said there. And that, because I have heard him speak a number of times, we have had hour-long conversations multiple times. One day last week, I got a phone call from a colonel that worked at Arlington National Cemetery. And I was informed that there were some members from the Sons of Confederate Veterans that wanted to be part of the consulting party, because they're going to be discussing everything going on with that. And she said they're going to allow one person from each organization. I have appointed Ed Phillips from the Sons of Confederate Veterans to be on the consulting party from Arlington National Cemetery. And you have heard some of the reasons. You've heard what he has said. You heard how he has phrased it. This is a man, and not only is he an attorney, I believe you're a history major too. Isn't that correct, sir?
That's true. University of Tennessee at Knoxville. So technically, I have a degree in history.
Okay.
And, what really matters is in these comments and this being the point of contact, we have the ability to at least tell them what we think. And we have the ability to do it diplomatically, but firmly. When they think of us, and this is true of my dad when he was in Massachusetts when I was young, they called him a redneck, which really made him mad. They called him a hillbilly, which he could tolerate. They called him a rebel, which he was proud of. And, they looked at him as being different. They were right. He was different. He was different because here's what people don't remember about the South. And this is what we have to remind everybody about. And that is, there are three things that make Southerners different in my mind than other people in the nation. One is their faith. They put their faith first. Second is their family. But when I say family, you know what I mean. It's not just your immediate family. It means your ancestors, all the family names that came before you, whether it was your grandmother who was a Patterson, your grandfather who was a Phillips, all those names that are related to all those families, all of your ancestors, because you can go to a place up in the hollers, wherever it is, in East Tennessee for me, and you know where your fourth great grandfather stood.
Mm-hmm.
You know what land he owned, where they were, what their footprint was, right? And that is something that is so unique about the South. And the other final thing is that there's this attachment to the land because of it. I can go up and cross into Hawkins County, Tennessee on Lee Highway, Highway 11. As soon as I get in, I can look off to the left and I can see where my fifth great grandfather had built a mill and a fort, and it's marked by historical marker. Ensign Robert Patterson, an ensign in the French and Indian War, who was enlisted at the time of Braddock's defeat. He was at the Battle of Monongahela. Southerners know those things.
Mm-hmm.
And Southern fathers and grandfathers and uncles pass those down to their sons and their nephews. Their daughters, not so much, but their daughters know, but not like their sons know. And that's what separates Southerners from anyone else in the country. The only ones who are close to Southerners, in my estimation, are the farmers out in the Midwest, because they have the same attachment to faith, family, and the land. But otherwise, people don't understand.
Mm-mm.
And that's why our forebears fought so hard. It was for all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at my responsibility as a consultant to basically Arlington National Cemetery and the U.S. Army, I take that seriously, because not only do I carry the weight of my family, but I carry the weight of all of your families, of every one of you and every one of your ancestors who put on a uniform, who left their homes, whether it's in Columbia, Tennessee, Mount Pleasant, Charlotte, Raleigh, Richmond,
Everywhere.
Petersburg, everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter. That's what my job is. My job is to represent you and everyone who came before you. And that's a heavy burden, but it's a burden we all share. And I can do it with your support, and I can do it as long as we always take the high road. And that's the other thing about Southerners people don't understand. They take the high road. Now, if you keep on, double crossing them, they realize who you are, and your actions tell people who you are. And then they make a decision whether they can trust you or not. If they don't trust you, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
My dad used to tell me that when I was a boy, and I understood exactly what he meant. And so that's the way I look at it. And that's the responsibility I have. And if there are things you want me to think about, and if there are things that are important to you, you can reach me and you can send me an email. And I've got my email for Tennessee JAG position. If I remember correctly, it's SCVTNJAG@gmail. Send me an email. Tell me what you want me to think about. Tell me what you want me to know. and tell me what you think is important. And I will do my best to make sure I bring that forward during the consulting process, because that's important.
Very much so. And I want to thank you for taking this on. Folks, the Sons of Confederate Veterans have a seat at the table for the Arlington National Cemetery Consulting Party. And Ed Phillips is the man that is going to be sitting at the table for us. And there's a particular reason why I chose him. The colonel that called me said you're going to have to pick one person, because we can't just allow anybody on this. Your organization going to choose one person. I chose Ed. I have worked with Ed a great deal. I have full faith, full trust in Ed Phillips. Now, I know some more people out there are wanting on the consulting party. Don't say you're from the Sons of Confederate Veterans, because there is only one rep per organization. The colonel told me twice. There's one rep, and this man is it. And Ed, I want to thank you for taking that on. I know that's a big responsibility. And I know I've put Ed under a whole lot of stress over the last couple of years. And he has always come through, and he's come through with flying colors. And I have full faith in him. Do you want to give an update on our lawsuit in Arlington, where it stands right now?
I will. And here's what's interesting. The Department of Justice has replaced their original attorneys. So when we had the lawsuit, the folks that defend Arlington filed it in DC. We filed it in the Eastern District of Virginia because we thought that was the proper place to bring it. Of course, the DOJ attorneys wanted it transferred to DC because, well, home cooking, right? So we fought against the transfer. We lost, which I knew we would. And the litigation, I'm not expectant of a grand victory, because the deck is stacked. And that's not saying we're not going to get a fair shake. It's just saying that there are people who are politically motivated, and they will make a choice based on that, which is unfortunate. However, as it stands with the transfer, my co-counsel, Colt Purrier in Virginia, he was going to and working on his ability to be admitted to the bar in the District of Columbia. In any federal court, you can waive in to a new federal court as long as you have, you're a member of a bar of one federal court as an attorney, and you're licensed in the state in which you're trying to seek admission to the federal court, they will allow it. So I was originally admitted right after law school into the Western District of Tennessee. Then when I was in Raleigh, North Carolina, specifically White Forest, when I was working there and living there with my family, after 2009, I lost my corporate job. I had a federal case, and I had to get into the Middle District of North Carolina. I was admitted without a hitch. Just had to file a simple application. Well, DC, in order to get admitted, you have to be someone who actually knows a member of the DC bar and has known that person for at least 1 year, and they can vouch for you, right? They can sponsor you. Colt went through, in the past several weeks, over 30 people that he knew, trying to find one person who is still a member of the DC bar. And all the people he reached out to, there's only one. And that person was in the DC bar from 1995 to 2012. And he told Colt, all right, Colt, I'll reapply, I'll seek to reactivate my membership in the DC bar, and then I'll sponsor you. So we had to jump through all those hoops. And during all that time, we also had to file a response to a motion to dismiss. the response that we did at the time was 33 pages. And on August 28th, the DC court would not let us file it because neither myself or Colt was a member of the DC bar or had permission to appear before the court, right? And because of that, we got caught in a bind. Of course, DOJ knew that was coming for us, and we tried everything we could do with the amount of time we had to find someone to sponsor Colt. So at this point, we had to reach out to another lawyer, a very good lawyer, a lawyer who actually has a lot more notoriety and fame than a lot of other lawyers I know. And he's handled some very high profile cases. I won't get into the politics of it because, one, I can't and I don't want to. But his position, he's a good lawyer, he's tough, and he's going to get us over the hump of what DOJ, the position DOJ's put us in. Basically what happened was, because of this case being transferred, the SCV was cut off from its attorneys. And they were cut off from their attorneys because of a rule that we didn't know we were about to get hit with. Because no one's sitting back thinking, well, I've got to find a member of the DC bar who I've known for over a year. And one attorney I knew, I told her, I said, well, I think we've known each other for at least a year. Of course, I was told no. I was like, okay, maybe I'm wrong. I didn't think I was, but so that's where we are. And we had a solution. And he and his partner will be filing our response tomorrow. They beefed it up a little bit because, lawyers can't leave well enough alone, right? Because we always have to do something, But I will tell you this. He told both Colt and I it was a very good response.
Mm-hmm.
It was well done, and he just wanted to tweak it. Because sometimes when you get more time to look at something, you can actually tweak things, and it's better. So that's what he did this weekend. They'll be filing that tomorrow and telling the court why it shouldn't be dismissed, because we did not intentionally miss or avoid filing our response, but because of a technical issue, we couldn't make it happen. So it's really frustrating because if you get a side that comes in and tells you that, you're not going to be able to file, you're not going to be able to do this, and you can't represent your client, that's a problem, and no matter what you do, you have to overcome the odds. You've got to keep on fighting. You can't stop. You just have to do it. And that's really what it comes down to. You just have to fight. And sometimes it's a fight you never anticipated over something that you didn't think was going to happen, but it does. Yes. And that's just all there is to it. So,
yeah. Some of the bumps in the road, when this first started, Ed and I had a lot of conversations, and a lot of the bumps in the road we anticipated and we talked about, and we had solutions to those. This was one that we did not. This was one that none of us foresaw. And then I remember getting the call from him, in which an angry Ed Phillips and an aggravated Ed Phillips is not a very good man to listen to on the phone. He was a gentleman, but he used words, legal terms that never heard of. And we had to talk through it for a little bit. And then I think that we've got a good solution now, because that was one thing. And we have worked past it. Have we not? We have worked past that hitch. Is he all right,
Sorry
Ed?
about that, Jason. Yep, I had an issue.
Uh-oh.
See?
We do that
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. But I think that this was one of them we didn't anticipate. When we found out that Defend Arlington was going to file in D.C., we knew that there was a possibility that was going to be transferred. And we tried to get a workaround for that, and we had a workaround, but the judge did not see it that way. And now where we were with this, we didn't know. You didn't know that you had to be a member of the DC bar or somebody know you for a year and all of these stipulations having to do with that. But we did get a good workaround. And this was the only thing that I think we've come across that we really didn't anticipate. We knew that the road was going to be a long, tough road uphill. We knew that it was going to be. And we knew that we were going to have a lot of obstacles that people were going to cast in front of us. And some of those we have avoided. Other ones, we were already well past them before they threw the obstacles across. But in this particular case, this was one, and we did get worked around. And I want to thank him for his efforts on that. Thank you for it.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? Because I haven't been looking much at the comments, but I'm just going to give if you something you want to make a comment on, or there's any questions that anybody has. We've had a lot of long days going on here over the last couple of weeks, a lot of long nights. In fact, we were working until 1:30 the other morning. You and I were going back and forth and on emails. And I don't know if we talked that late, but I know we were talking at 11 o'clock. I think we were actually doing stuff at 1:30. So
we spoke at 11. We're exchanging emails and text messages about 1:30.
And I thank you for all that, for tolerating me, because I realize I'm not the most pleasant person to deal with at times. And I thank you for having the patience to work with me. But just as a summation, the first comment period for the Arlington National Cemetery has passed. I hope that everybody has made comments on that. I hope everybody did make comments who wanted to make comments. Tomorrow on the Telegraph, there will be a message that will go out that will have a link it's going to be 4 links to go on One Click Politics to send to representatives and send to senators. That's on these committees. This is not your representative. They might be your representative, but this is not your general representative. This just these people on these 4 committees, 2 in the House and 2 in the Senate. And when you get that, please go and send the letters. Those of you who wish to and who can, print them off, sign them, mail them, or do your own handwritten letter and get it out there and get them to them. Now, remember, the email link that you're going to follow out, that's going to give us our volume. The written letters is going to give us our impact. And then other than that, we'll be keeping you updated on that. I'm able to look on One Click Politics, how many people have sent stuff. So I will be giving an update on that on Thursday on Commander's Comments. How many people have already done that? Other than that, I'm going to ask for one particular favor, that next time you bow your head and say your prayers, that you say a little prayer for us as we're working through this. If you'd be kind enough to give us a sentence or two, I'd really greatly appreciate it, because we're both of us going uphill. Ed, would you like to add anything?
Well, I couldn't have said it better. Prayer is a powerful thing. Faith is a powerful thing. And remember, people out there are telling us what we knew and know to be righteous and good. They're telling us it is now immoral and wrong.
Mm-mm.
So I'm not worthy of all those comments. And I'm not worthy for a lot of reasons. But I do know God chooses each one of us to have to fight for what we need to fight for. And we're all in this. It's all our fight, and we have to stand together. Otherwise, we fail separately.
Yeah. Yes. And rest assured knowing that we're doing the best that we can do, and that we have a seat on the table with this consulting party for the Arlington National Cemetery. in that prayer, say a few kind words, hoping that we say the right words and make the right steps at the right time. Connor and Harrison, I've gotten so used to calling him Moose, I actually have to think about his name nowadays. Is there something that you two would like to add? You've been seeing the comments. Let's keep it kind of brief because Ed has had a lot of very long nights, and I don't want to delay him because I don't know. I think you might have had supper, but I know you've got family in or something, and you know, let's kind of move it. Anything real quick?
We do have one question, Commander. And here it is from Mr. John.
The letters that the comment that I made to Arlington National Cemetery, I'm just going to tell you what I did. I made it because I made it as part of what I sent in, that was put out by us, and which was part of the scoping comments. I put who I was and I put who my title was. Now, what I am going to be sending out in these 4 links, I'm doing it as a citizen of the United States of America, and I have a right to my opinion. That's simple. They already knew who I was with Arlington. So I've already had a phone call, you know, and that's just blowing smoke. And I have too much respect for what they're trying to do up there that I'm not going to blow smoke at them. And I knew from what I was sending in with the detail of the scoping comments that there was no way that they knew that I would not have had privilege to that conversation. So I sent them with my name and title. But the 4 that's going to be going out, I'm sending them as a United States citizen.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong. We were busy, you know, monitoring for trolls and things like that. We don't have a time limit on these letters that are coming out tomorrow, right? We can, you know, send them as many times as we want to, as long as we want to, until the fight's over, right?
As far as I'm go ahead, Ed. You answer. Yes, sir.
Well, I was going to say that's correct, and you know what it comes down to is, you know, you can take your time sending them, but just don't take too long.
Yeah. So every camp adjutant within the Confederation, every camp commander, y'all have it's September 4th. I only know of, in Mississippi, one camp that has met since the beginning of the month. Actually, wait, let me see. Yeah, they did meet on Saturday. But every camp adjutant, camp commander, you have a month, several months, but this month, you know, print off as many as you can, take them to your camp meeting, get your folks to sign them there. Stamps are 50 cents. I mean, you know, if you got to vote on it to take it out of the camp's fund, do that.
Stamps are 66 cents.
Oh, well, back when I bought my Forever Rolls a couple of years ago, they were 50 cents.
Okay.
So,
all right. Well, I want accuracy here now. I don't want anybody else popping up saying.
I ain't bought stamps in a while, but yeah, that's because
apparently not, because they've gone up 4 times since then.
Yeah, well,
true.
when I invested in those Forever stamps, they were, you know, 50 cents a piece. Anyway,
You
whatever.
were floating alone.
Yeah. So what you're saying is I shouldn't use my crypto anymore. I should sell my stamps. Got it. But no, whatever. It's still less than $1. I mean, go ahead and collect as many, you know, signatures as you can this month. I mean, that's going to be your easiest way to make sure that your camp's being active in this.
And for those who want to share out the Telegraph, and maybe you don't know how to copy and paste or make sure you're not unsubscribed, scvchat.com will have it on our website for you to share it out to whoever you please.
Okay. Yes, just and concerning those 4 letters, as far as I know, there is not a time limit on that, but I really wouldn't dilly-dally a long time. Keep a steady flow of them coming in, and I think that would be the healthiest way to do it, because we don't know when they're going to ask for the next Arlington National Cemetery comment period. So we're going to be sending more stuff out when that comes out. And the one thing that I'm going to do is after this goes out, there's 2 guys I need to talk to. Y'all might have heard of them. They're called the Kennedy Twins. I'm going to be talking to the Kennedy Twins because the Kaplan Post stuff needs to go out right after this does, because we need to still keep a steady flow of information. Of course, we'll be on Thursday night, Commander's Comments, to talk about getting that Kaplan study out, in which we're going to be asking our members to share some stuff out about that as well. So,
especially, and just the one thing on Mississippi, and you mentioned the Senate Armed Services Committee early on in the episode. Hey
yes.
guys, our senior senator is the minority chair or the minority ranking member on that. So we've got a little poll on there. Also looking on it, the senator from Alabama, Tommy Tuberville, who's been doing some very interesting things in the Senate, at least dealing with the Armed Services Committee. He's on there as well. So,
yes, in the Senate, there's two committees: the Armed Services Committee and the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. You can look both of those up, and it'll tell you who their members are. And a lot of them have local offices, and if you're able to pay a visit to the local office, that could go a long way too. And then on the House, there's also a Defense Appropriations Subcommittee and an Armed Services Committee both on there too. So in both the House and the Senate, there's going to be 4 that will be going out. So there's, I think the Armed Services Committee, 27 members, I think, is on the Armed Services Committee. Does that sound right, Ed?
That sounds about right.
Yes. So if you mail everybody or you email everybody, you're looking at 80 plus letters. And I still think that that's a small price to pay. You're looking at $80 to print them, sign them, and mail them. If you wanted just to mail a letter to everybody, but I think impact is like you've got a guy from Mississippi that is on one of those committees. He ought to get a letter from everybody in Mississippi.
right.
That's a member of the sons, a member of the daughters. All of us need to be working together on this. Share it out there. Get the UDC involved with it. Get the OCR involved with it. Get your parents. Get your cousins. Hey, I'm going to have a cookout this weekend. By the way, y'all going to be signing some letters for me. That kind of stuff, and get your family to do it, because this is one of those times volume is going to speak volumes. Boy, that sounded odd, didn't it? Volume is going to speak volumes.
It did.
Are there anything else? Because I know, and I'm trying to defend Ed and help Ed as much as I can, because he has been doing a whole lot of stuff for us. And he has had a lot of long days and a lot of long nights, and up early the next day, because I think when we were up working at 1:30, you actually had to be in court by 9 the next morning.
That's right.
Yes. So
that's the way it goes.
Is there anything else y'all'd like to add?
Moose, I think we're good. Everybody tune in for Thursday show with Commander's Comments. There'll be some more information. Sign up for the Telegraph if you're not signed up for the Telegraph. You've signed up for the website if you're not signed up for the website. The good thing about us putting it on the website is our UDC, OCR ladies, who are not getting the Telegraph or don't qualify for the Telegraph, you can still get the same information from there. Thursday, 7:00, same time. Y'all Correct. We have the game plan. Let's get it going. Appreciate you, Ed and Commander in Chief, for coming on. We're going to go ahead and end the episode here. Remember to check out all the other shows. Look around Southwest Florida, whatever the guys at Monuments Cross Dixie are doing, Michael Hardy's, the Douglas Southall Freeman, et cetera, et cetera. It's ours to lose, ladies and gentlemen. So
see y'all Thursday night.
Anything, Moose?
No, we're good.
Thank you, guys, and thank you, Ed.
All right. In the words of the late great Harold Phillips, remember, until next time, no Fumar in the elevator.